Good evening. Welcome to the third round of public engagement for the new Rapid Transit for a Growing Equitable Rochester Transit-Oriented Development Planning Study. My name is Hubbard, and I'm a project manager for the City of Rochester. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for attending tonight. We know the times are challenging and everyone's in a little bit of flux and change. And having tonight's session might be a little bit of stretch out of your time, but we thank you nonetheless. Tonight is the third round of 3 phases to this planning study. The first 2 rounds happened in February and April. As part of this round, we have 2 webinars, the one tonight from 6 to 7, and next Tuesday we have another session from noon to 1. If you're on tonight, there's no need to attend the one from next week from noon to 1. We will be covering the exact same material. For more information about the project or to see any information about the study and everything you see tonight, please visit our website, www.rochestermm.gov/Rochester TOD. There you'll be able to see slides from the night, much more images on the stations that we're presenting tonight, and information how to reach us. Right now, I'll take a second to say one way you can reach us is by giving us a phone call at 507-328-2025. That's 507-328-2025. Or by sending us an email at rapidtransit, one word, at rochestermn.gov. Jono, can you move the slides? Thank you. Tonight, we'll allow you a couple different ways to provide input and get involved with myself and the rest of the presenters. The first way you'll be able to do that is by clicking the raise your hand feature on your toolbar on the bottom of your screen. And then we'll take a couple pauses during the session, and we will try to go ahead and call you out, and we'll unmute your mic, so give us a second on that, and then you'll be allowed to ask your question directly to us over the session. If that is not for you, you can always submit your question via the Q&A feature on the toolbar as well. With that, I will thank you once again and hand you off to Chris Hall of SOM. Chris?
Okay, thanks, Jared. So Jonah, if you move to the next slide. And then the next slide. Just to explain what we'll be doing tonight, we will be talking you through some of the background on the study as a quick reminder, but really the focus tonight is to look in more detail at proposals for the station areas around the rapid transit route, and examples of how those areas may change, and also what we can expect in terms of public realm enhancements and bikeability and walkability enhancements, so that we can communicate the whole picture of what may transpire in the future. But as backgrounds, this is it's an important time for the city. There have been a series of studies in the past which have clearly identified the potential for growth of the city. And so now within this framework, we're looking at the possibilities of rapid transit and what that would actually mean in terms of shaping the city. This is really about the future shape of the city and coordinating investment to achieve the strongest mobility options for all residents, employees, and businesses, but also guiding growth and the quality of place and quality of life in the future. Next. And as some background, there is a locally preferred alternative route, and right now we're focusing on phase 1 of that route, which is on 2nd Street Southwest and connects from what's currently the Mayor West parking lot on the west side of the city, and connects along 2nd Street to St. Mary's, through to downtown, close to Mayo Clinic facilities, and then has a loop around the government center and city and county facilities around 3rd Avenue and 4th Street. But really the purpose, as we talked about, is to enhance economic opportunity, enhance quality of life, help achieve a shift in terms of how people move around the city, and really support that stronger quality of life and stronger quality of growth and development that we're all seeking. Next. And of course, there's a long background to this. So this is the culmination of a series of plans which have happened over the last decade or so, and also they're a springboard for continued studies and investigations. This is certainly not the end of the line. It's a way station on the way, and it's a level of study that takes things to the next level of detail, but then provides a platform for architecture, engineering, and more detailed funding applications and design studies. Next. And some of the key milestones, if you attended some of the previous webinars and presentations, you'll be familiar with this. But essentially at this point, we're in a public engagement round looking at station area concepts, and that leads to a series of decisions and finalization of this plan, which then becomes the basis for further engineering and design detail processes that will begin over the summer and really move in full speed ahead in the fall this year. So moving on to the vision. Next. There are 3 key principles we wanted to promote through this process, and we stepped back right at the beginning, and these are kind of concepts that we established early on and which have continued through the process. We want to prioritize well-being. Rochester is a city that's got great open spaces. It's got larger lakes, it has creeks, it's got rivers. It has a series of connections to open spaces and nature. We really wanted to make sure that people could have enhanced access to those spaces as a result of this transit. So we've spent a lot of time investigating how you can improve connections to open spaces. So that supports well-being in terms of exercise and health, but this is also a framework which allows people to walk instead of drive and to bike around as well. So a strong mobility network is about how does this rapid transit route also connect to enhanced bike connections and also enhanced pedestrian frameworks around immediate station areas, and allowing people to move around in healthy ways, but also move around very efficiently between home and places of work, but also to get to retail, to other services and community services they need. And then guiding smart growth. We really want this to be a smart way to achieve the city's growth goals by organizing future development in a way that relates to transit, but also making sure we get the right kind of development. That there's retail, there are community services, there are affordable housing, so that all of the needs that today's residents and future residents have can be met within the city. So those are 3 underlying principles, and you'll see some of these ideas come through as we investigate in detail. And as we mentioned before, we're kind of organizing the rapid transit route into a series of districts. The West Gateway, which is between Highway 52 and out to the West Transit Village. What we're calling the City Corridor, which really encompasses St. Mary's to 6th Avenue. The downtown core, which is 6th Avenue, and then around to the government center. And those are the 3 main phases we're focusing on tonight and as part of this process. And then, of course, there'll be a future phase, which is relating to the downtown southeast waterfront and the Broadway corridor. And that will be aligned to further investigation of the 2nd phase of the locally preferred alternative for the transit route. So investigation of future extensions to the south, and that will impact the Broadway corridor and the downtown southeast waterfront area. So next. So tonight we're going to look at a series of station areas. These are examples. It's a range of stations. It's not every single one, but it's a range of stations and locations which will be really serviced by rapid transit and have the potential to see transformation destination. So these are places that are destinations, but they're also places we can expect to see future evolution of housing, jobs, retail, and services, and also the places where we actually enable this mode shift. If people are able to get out of their cars and use transit, walking, biking, these are the places, these are the hubs where that becomes a reality. Next. And what you'll see through this presentation and also the information that's online is a series of station area concepts. And those consider the vision and the role in terms of the future evolution of those station areas in terms of development, but also really consider how we advance connectivity and how we enhance the public realm. So these are examples of what we'll go through in a little more detail in a moment. But this is the kind of information that we'll be presenting next. And the kind of things that we're interested in hearing back on are how can we enhance these station area concepts? What type of retail or community amenities could be included? And how is that different between different stations also? How can we enhance our ideas for public spaces? And again, they have different functions and different numbers of people who will be using those. And then how can we encourage people to walk or bike to the rapid transit stop? So that may be some ideas you have about how we can enhance some of the connections that we're proposing. So next. So we'll talk through each segment and station area in turn, and Joni Gies with SRF Consulting will also be joining me in this and introducing the ideas around public realm and connectivity in particular. So the first area we're looking at is the West Gateway. So on 2nd Street Southwest, west of Highway 52, we see this area as an activated urban corridor and a point of arrival for employees and visitors. Next. And a location that has connections right now in the sense of there's quite extensive trail connectivity around Cascade Lake. But what we want to do is enhance the connectivity in this area, extending bike connections, extending the streetscape framework, which has been established on 2nd Street Southeast, going out as far as 23rd, extending that out further west on 2nd Street Southwest to create a more comprehensive network throughout this area. And what we're also looking at is what the future potential opportunities are for new development. And so this is an initial assessment of areas that could see change over the next 20 years, and it includes surface parking areas, some lower density and maybe auto-oriented development, which over time could be replaced. And it's kind of important to say we're not mandating this change. We're providing a framework within which individual property owners and businesses can make their own decisions. But we anticipate over the next 20 years, many of them will see real opportunity, particularly with rapid transit coming into service. So next. So the first area we wanted to look at is the West Transit Village, which you may be familiar with. Next. And our overarching principles for the West Transit Village are to promote mixed use. That means that there's residential, there's retail, there's potentially some small local office, maybe some smaller spaces for community services, but it's a mixed use transit village. It's a major pickup for people coming to parking facilities and making a direct transfer onto transit, which allows them to get to downtown. It means they don't have to drive into downtown as well. But it will be mixed use. There'll be many activities here. And mixed use buildings should have very active ground floors. We want to make sure there's high degrees of transparency, a sense that people are in the buildings. There's a relationship between what's happening inside the building and what's happening on the street. Streets should be lushly and richly landscaped, and also be designed to really support walking, biking, and transit. And this is also an opportunity for new homes for Rochester residents. So we're really interested in seeing local needs met as part of this process as well. So next. And so this is the framework that's being proposed, and of course, lots of details still to work out through subsequent phases from here. But the fundamental idea is that the transit route would come west, turn into the site, and have a short loop back on itself through the site and then back out onto 2nd Street again. The station would be on the interior of the site. The loop street would be very close to a parking facility, but it's also where we would focus retail and service activity. And we see the potential here for residential development through the balance of the site. There will be other parking facilities which may be purely for public use or would be for resident use, but a series of blocks and residential development opportunities, and organized around really high quality streets, but also organized around a new public space. We think there should be a strong public space for use by everybody. So it's public to the whole city, to all residents. And that will connect through from 2nd Street Southwest through the site and then connect out to Cascade Lake. This is also an opportunity to enhance bike connections so that people traveling to Cascade Lake, cycling around or hiking around, can also get out to 2nd Street or vice versa. We also think 2nd Street will become a really strong address as well. So development comes up 2nd Street, homes will face 2nd Street, it will become more normalized. So less of a suburban highway with a surface parking lot, and really much more part of the fabric of the city. So next. So Joni, do you want to talk through the public realm?
Absolutely. So as Chris had stated, one of the really big moves from an urban design perspective is really this significant green space in the heart of the West Transit Village that is making both a visual and a physical connection between 2nd Street and Cascade Lake. We really want this district to also be very supportive of walking. So therefore, all the streets are proposed to be lined with generous sidewalks that are also lined with street trees and pedestrian scale lighting to enhance the safety and the security of people as they are moving through this district. And we really want to support walking between the commuters who are coming here who might want to use the retail, the residents, and also visitors to this area. In addition, this concept is in proposing some sustainability principles, such as harvesting stormwater from the site and using that stormwater to irrigate the new street trees along our streetscape. Next. So this is a section through 2nd Street, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, and we are looking east towards downtown. And currently, the streetscape treatment on 2nd stops at 23rd Avenue. And as Chris was talking about, a very important move that is being recommended is to extend that streetscape treatment out to the West Transit Village. And really, once again, create a very walkable neighborhood that people would be very comfortable to move between the West Transit Village and some of the uses further to the east. And with that would mean the incorporation of pathways on both of the roadways that are set back from the street with a landscape boulevard that includes street trees and pedestrian scaled lighting. We're showing buffered bike lanes to improve the comfort of bicyclists in this area. And we're also showing the buildings in the West Transit Village coming up close to the street so that the buildings are actually helping to create the street and defining it as a public realm space that people are comfortable to inhabit. Next.
Okay, so the next area we want to look at is on 2nd Street and 19th Avenue. So this is, if you go to the next slide. So we think this is a great opportunity to create a new community hub. So this would be a place where people who are existing residents could come for shopping services. It's also a place we expect some existing residents may want to relocate to in the future. It's also a place where future residents can live. And this would be a place that is transit-oriented development, but also incorporates retail services, community services, enhance streetscape and public realm, and places that people can really gather as well. We see this as a very vibrant local neighborhood hub, which has a range of activities and is very attractive, and that attractiveness also encourages people to walk and bike to this location where they can access transit. Next. So this is the station area development concept we have, which is, as we talked about, a new community hub, a TOD, residential, retail, potentially local office. And we've organized this so the taller buildings are right around the station platform locations, which would be either side of 19th Avenue. They're after the intersection in the direction of travel. And then buildings step down a little bit in terms of their uses. So they may become more residential a little bit further away from the intersection, and they may step down in heights a little further away from the intersection as well. But we hope this will be a really connected place. You can see we have some ideas for creating and enhancing bike connections through to Cascade Lake Park and enhancing pedestrian connections via Suburb West Park. But this would be a neighborhood hub. It's kind of neighborhood scale. So 4- and 5-story buildings right around the intersection, and some active retail and ground floor spaces. So next. So Joni.
From the public realm, you can see the light blue boxes are indicating where the proposed transit platforms would be located. And adjacent to those platforms, the idea is to provide space for people to securely store their bicycles if they would like to bike to these transit stop, and also places to stage shared mobility, such as motorized scooters. This node has some significant and really nice streetscaping already. And so the goal is, as redevelopment occurs, to only continue to reinforce and strengthen that streetscape to really create a comfortable walking experience for neighborhood residents who are walking to the platforms and walking to the businesses that will be occurring along 2nd Street. And with that, the concept is showing raised crosswalks along 19th Avenue. And what this will do is keep the crosswalk at the same elevation as the adjacent sidewalks. And we see this as a benefit for pedestrians, in particular those who might be using mobility devices, because they will stay up at the sidewalk level, not have to go down to the street and come back up. Another move that we are proposing in this concept is the idea of a pedestrian plaza along 19th Avenue. That plaza will help create a visual connection to Zumbro West Park, just to the north, to help people understand that there is a park that can be used in close proximity. In addition, that plaza can be used to support any retail uses that are occurring in the adjacent building. And that plaza really can be used and enjoyed by the visitors to that retail establishment, their employees, and the neighborhood residents in proximity to this area. And finally, we really do want to improve bicycle connectivity to the station. So we are proposing new bike routes, and also wanting to strengthen the pedestrian and bicycle access to Cascade Lake Park, which is just a little to the northwest of this station. Next. So here you are looking at another street section, and this section is taken just to the east of the intersection. And I'd like to point out a few things. We are showing that there will be dedicated travel lanes in the street for business access and transit, and those are labeled as BAT lanes. In addition, we are preserving the bicycle lanes that currently exist on the street today. To be consistent with the zoning code that this area is located in, which is a TOD corridor, we are providing generous 10-foot sidewalks on both sides of the street, which are set back from the roadway with landscape boulevards. If the land uses, and once again, let me say that the buildings are placed such that they are once again coming up closer to the street edge, to the right of way, to once again help define that street as a public realm space. Now, depending what the uses are that occur in these buildings, if they are retail uses, then that space between the building frontage and the right of way could be designed in a way to once again support that retail usage and to further activate the space, the street space. Next.
Okay, so I think we wanted to and stop at this point and give people the opportunity, if there are any immediate questions, to whether it's about the study overall or any of the specifics you've seen for these two locations. So we wanted to offer that opportunity right now.
Okay. Actually, we have a couple questions come on in, but we had Paula raised her hand. Jono, can you help me get Paula unmuted so that she can ask her question? Paula, are you there? Looks like she's muted, Jono.
Okay, no, something in a rollover turned I couldn't get the arrow to click the unmute. I have a couple, well, 3 or 4 short questions. My first question is, well, actually my first thing is a compliment that y'all are doing the raised crosswalks. I'm a person with disabilities. I have multiple sclerosis, and I have been advocating for raised crosswalks because they function both to make it easier for me to get anywhere and people with low vision, as well as safety, because they act as a traffic suppressor subconsciously. One of my concerns on the picture that showed the little blue section for the buses was I've seen our city buses backed up 2 and 3 deep. And I'm just wondering if you have left enough room for the reality of the bus traffic that is currently happening. And then if you're going to throw 60 footers with the articulated buses in there. I'll just ask all my questions and then you can figure out how to answer them or not. I haven't heard the phrase pedestrian scale lighting before, but along that thought, one of the concepts I've been wondering about is so many things I see, like benches and parks that have white light in them, but everybody knows that red light preserves night vision. And so theoretically, if you're going to do pedestrian lighting, it would be better to use red lighting. In fact, headlight should be red and taillight should be white that operate on a rheostat, so they get brighter the harder you step on the brake. And then you talk about the mobility options, and you talked about bicycles and having the street sidewalk be right close to the buildings. But then where would somebody with disabilities park? Have you allocated places in so that I could go to a store along the corridor? If there's no parking on the street, where am I going to go? And then it looks, I don't know when you drew this up, but it looks like you have permanently incorporated the Kmart parking lot in the route. And I'm just curious when that happened, and what would you do if that Kmart route were properly changed to not be a flat lot parking?
Okay. So
Chris, go ahead if you want to.
Yeah, maybe we can answer, take the questions in reverse, and then Joni can talk about the specifics around kind of streetscape and public realm, some of those details. I think, and Jared may add to this, but just in terms of the Kmart parking lot, that's subject to future planning. So a future planning process, the southeast, downtown southeast waterfront small area plan will address that in detail. So So that's the process for that. In terms of parking, it's a really good question, an interesting question. I mean, generally, what we would encourage is that parking happens behind buildings. So that's not unusual now where new retail development happens, even if it's single story, that the parking lot is placed behind the building so that the retail continuity is from the sidewalk, the front door is from the sidewalk, but they're often through retail units, so there would be doors either side of the building. So we'd expect that kind of arrangement if you were going purely to a retail building. And then where there are mixed-use buildings, you know, there is often retail parking, dedicated retail parking spaces incorporated into buildings, either in structure or outside behind the building as part of those future developments. So those are two I remember. I think pedestrian lights and bus stacking. Joni, do you want to take those?
Absolutely. So Paula, in terms of the pedestrian scaled lighting, what that really means is the lighting, typically if you look out at the street today, the predominant light fixture that you're going to see is about 20-25 feet tall and has kind of an arc to it. And that street light is predominantly there really to provide light to the street surface itself. The pedestrian scale lightings are much shorter. They're typically only on a pole height of maybe 12 to 14 feet tall. They typically are much more aesthetic to look like. They actually help to improve the appearance of the street itself. And their focus really is to throw light towards the sidewalk to help improve the visibility of pedestrians, to help them to see where they're going and to be seen. I will say that my husband is an amateur astronomer, so I understand the red light and how nice that is once you're acquainted to it. I have not seen red light used in a streetscape to date. Typically, the lighting, for many years, the source of the lighting was it was called a metal halide or sodium, high pressure sodium, which threw a yellow light onto the street. And recently, with the advances in lighting technology and LED lights, that light now has moved more towards a white color, which some people believe is preferable because they feel that they can help see other people that they're meeting along the street better and help to understand and actually see people, I guess is the best way I can state that. So then maybe moving on to the bus discussion. So with the approach of rapid transit along Second, one of the key things about this approach, which is different than the traditional bus service, is that the buses, people will be paying their fare for the bus while they're waiting to get on as part of that platform experience. So when the bus pulls up, people can just immediately walk onto the bus through both doors of the buses. And the intent is that people can load and unload that bus much quicker than what you typically do for a traditional bus in the city. In addition, the platforms are actually raised up somewhere in the vicinity of 12 inches. So that curb height, instead of being 6 inches, which is typical today, goes up somewhere in the range of 12 inches so that people have level loading from that sidewalk right into the bus. Once again, that would help with people who are using mobility devices and who have a little more of a physical handicap to be able to get onto a bus. And by having that level loading, once again, that should speed up the loading and unloading of the buses. So with all of those sort of features, and there are a few other features on top of that, the idea is that we should not have buses stacking up at these platforms. The buses will come in, people get on and off very quickly, and the bus moves on.
Okay, so shall we move on as well to the city corridor? Okay, so the next area we're looking at is the city corridor. So Jonah, if you move on. So this encompasses the St. Mary's campus and then also the, and then the 2nd Street corridor from 11th to 6th. And we really see this as part of the central city. You know, cities are growing along their corridors now. Traditional downtowns are changing in many ways in terms of the function and activity. So we see this as a diverse city scale corridor, an extension of the traditional core. And then really an opportunity to enhance connections between St. Mary's and downtown and core Mayo Clinic facilities as well. Next. So a series of proposals for enhancing connectivity for this area as well. It's very well connected in many ways for enhancing connectivity, and proposals for 3 station locations, one right at St. Mary's Hospital entrance on 2nd Street, and then around 9th Avenue, and then around 6th Avenue. So these are around a 5-minute walk or quarter-mile spacing, which is typically what we see in more urban districts. Next. And again, a series of opportunities that could arise over the next 20 years. Next. And one of the areas we're really interested in and kind of focusing on, as it's been subject to previous planning, significant thought in the past, is the area around between 11th and 9th, so to the immediate east of St. Mary's, but either side of the street. Next. And we see this as an idea of an expanded health district. So really taking St. Mary's as an anchor, but expanding out, and that would be based around patient care, but also potentially around other economic activities very closely linked to that patient care. A place for hospitality, retail, and housing. So additional activities beyond kind of core patient care and medical and employment. New public spaces. This is a location which could really benefit from new public spaces as new development occurs. And then enhanced streetscape and public realm, following a lot of the principles that we've seen elsewhere. Next. And this is the idea that we're evolving. The key idea is that patient care and medical related facilities are right next to St. Mary's hospitals on the south side of 2nd Street. So we are looking south right now. So St. Mary's Park is at the top of your screen, so we're looking south. So medical facilities close to St. Mary's on that side of the street, organized in a way that allows a stronger connection from St. Mary's Park down to the street and on access with 11th Street. And then on the north side of the street, more of a residential and hospitality focus. And of course, both sides of the street, we hope will include some retail, potentially some food and beverage as well. So that's the key development concept there and the way of organizing development. I think maybe a few things to point out is we are bringing buildings to the street. We are organizing with a strong relationship to the street, and parking would be kind of incorporated within buildings and access to the rear of buildings. Next.
So this station area concept is just located a little bit further to the east, right at the intersection of 9th Avenue and 2nd Street. And once again, this one of the primary moves that are being proposed as part of this station is that creation of a public open space associated with this station just north of 9th Avenue. This really creates a wonderful opportunity for the visitors, for the employees, and possibly the volunteers who would be working in this adjacent area to have a space to go out and enjoy during their breaks, or just to relax and get away. Associated with that open space, we are bringing forward a concept that was brought forward in a previous city plan, which is a mid-block connection, a pedestrian connection from 2nd Street up to Center Street to once again provide enhanced pedestrian access to this transit stop. And then lastly, once again, similar to the 19th Avenue station, 9th Avenue is a fairly low volume street, so we are once again proposing a raised crosswalk at this location as well. Next. So looking at a street section here, which is taken just to the west of 9th Avenue. Once again, we are showing those travel lanes on the roadway dedicated to business access and transit. We are also preserving those wonderful, beautiful planted median islands that currently exist in the street that are also serving to treat stormwater. Once again, we are showing generous sidewalks on both sides of the street, set back from the roadway with landscape median islands that include street trees and pedestrian scale lighting. And once again, we are having those buildings brought up closer to the right-of-way line, once again to help define 2nd Street as a public realm open space amenity. Next.
So next location to look at is at 6th Avenue. And this is really kind of a gateway location right on the edge of the historic and traditional downtown, but also a transition from surrounding neighborhoods. So next. And we thought of this as a downtown gateway. It really is the point that you feel like you're hitting downtown. It could have a wellness focus in terms of its employment activities and community service activities, but it's also a potential for urban living. And also there's the potential here for a range of housing types and incorporating affordable housing as well. So let's go next. And similar principles as we've seen elsewhere, which is really gathering the tallest buildings, highest densities, greatest mix of uses around the intersection. This intersection is also organized with platforms either side of it in the direction of travel. So after the intersection, it's also a place where we can enhance bike routes. So we're really looking to create a hub of focus, a sense of energy, and a sense of arrival for this location. And then stepping away, down slightly in terms of the heights as we move away. The next.
And so from the public realm perspective, as Chris said, we're really seeing this as the gateway to downtown. So in addition to having very generous sidewalks moving along 2nd Street, at this point, we are also proposing that the sidewalks increase width along 6th Avenue itself, because we're envisioning that a number of people who are going to get on and get off at this platform are actually employees, and we wanting to walk from this platform to their places of employment. As development occurs in this station area, we are also seeing opportunities to potentially bolster the streetscape in this area by providing additional boulevard widths and also additional street tree plantings in that area. One thing I would like to also highlight here is on the very far right of your diagram, on the diagram, that just wanted to point out, currently there are some very generous street boulevards and some very nice mature street trees in that section. So if we go to the next slide. So once again, looking at our cross section, once again, looking east towards downtown, one of the main goals in terms of this streetscape is to preserve those street trees to the east of 6th Avenue. We really want to maintain that mature vegetation on both sides of the street. And as we are getting closer to downtown, and as what Chris was showing in terms of some of the potential uses of those buildings, such as office, hotel, retail, residential, this area, it would be very likely that that space, once again, between those buildings that are defined in the street and that right of way, really could be designed in a manner to, once again, support the interior uses of those buildings and really create spaces that can be enjoyed by hotel visitors, retail visitors, employees, and community residents. Next.
Okay, next. So the next area is the downtown core. So next. So this is the area where there are 3 stations, one which would be downtown core station, approximately around 2nd or 3rd Avenue, one past Broadway around 1st, and then on 4th Street. So creating something of a loop in this area. So this is kind of the loop which represents the turnaround for phase 1 for the locally preferred alternative. And as you can see, it's connected to a series of other connections in the area. Next. And These stations are preliminary and are subject to further investigation that will be evaluated against a series of criteria and then finalized through the architecture and engineering design phase of the project. Next. And we wanted to, as those decisions are evolving, we did want to look into to some of the locations where stations are likely to be placed. Next. So this is 4th Street. So just to the west of 3rd Avenue, essentially between the river and 3rd Avenue on 4th Street. So we really see this as a connected transit hub. It's actually where a number of bus routes come together already. It's an opportunity for jobs-led growth. This is an area that does have the government district and the government complex, so a significant number of office jobs and public service jobs already. That's an idea that can continue. We also see this as a new central city neighborhood with a range of housing types in a range of locations where people will essentially be within 5 minutes walk of their home and a rapid transit station. But also a network of smaller open spaces, which I think we're learning in this in the moment we're in right now. People really value having access to smaller open spaces just within a few minutes of their home. So we'd want to see that incorporated. Next. So this is a concept for this area, and you can see an idea for employment-led activities to south of 4th, and then more residential around that, potentially a hotel on the northeast corner of 4th and 3rd. These uses will all evolve over time, but this is also to give you a sense of the potential scale in this area, strongly related to the scale of the government center, and also not an unusual scale for a more central city environment like this. But the opportunity for some new neighborhoods, a new riverfront neighborhood, enhancing connections in terms of bike links, pedestrian links, interaction between different transit routes as well. So this could be a very dynamic area by 2040. Next. And then we also thought we'd look at Broadway and 4th, because although there isn't specifically a station at this intersection, there's a lot of dynamics here, and it's very closely related to the transit investment. Next. So we saw this as the crossing in many ways. There's a crossing across the river on the 4th Street Bridge, but you're also really crossing into the core of downtown once you hit north of 4th. And it's really a Main Street kind of location, the opportunity for collaboration and intersection amongst many different uses, an opportunity to really enhance the Sunbury River, and also a growing central city area. Next. And again, this is, and you'll be able to see these on the website and look at these in more detail, but it's a very mixed use development concept with densities and heights related to the surrounding context, but also opportunities to strengthen the riverfront and potentially create a new riverfront park with very strong public access both along the waterfront and to the water's edge. Next. And then quickly, we have talked about this being subject to a future planning study, the Downtown Southeast Waterfront small area plan area, so extensive considerations in the future and linked to phase 2 considerations for transit. Next. So a series of objectives which are really about extending the street grid and making sure that everything is completely connected to the surrounding framework, and so there's strong interplay between existing neighborhoods and future development, and a rich series of open spaces available to people. Next. And some of these we've talked about before, making sure this area has great streets. Next. And creates a new riverfront park for Rochester, which could be a very naturalized edge, could be more formal, or to be determined, but certainly the great opportunity for that kind of open space. Next. And potentially a larger park or open space within new development as it occurs. Next. And that network of smaller public spaces we were talking about, which people really value right now. and we think will continue to value in the future. Next. And a range of different housing types, from a townhome scale, which allows development to transition to neighborhoods. Next. And then to a more TOD station area scale as the transit alignment and station locations are resolved. Next. So I think we want to open up for further questions and discussion at this point.
Yes, Chris. We've had a few questions come on in via the chat that I want to make sure that we hit, or the Q&A button that I want to make sure we hit. The first one that did come on in was related to the West Station and the West Transit lot. That will be located on what is known as the Mayo West parking lot currently today. So I can answer that one real quickly. The next kind of comment I think is a good one related to a resident near the West Transit Village commenting about the 2nd Street feeling currently kind of busy and quick. Is there anything that we can do in our street design that can help with that?
Yeah, I think one of our ideas is actually to slow down traffic so that you design that Joni presented essentially would reduce speed. So, so speeds right now after 23rd go up to 45 miles an hour, I believe. So we'd certainly be looking at reducing those speeds down to something similar to what's found east of 23rd. And yeah, if the question is about reducing those speeds in that area even further, then I think that's something that can be investigated as part of the next stage of the study.
Agreed. Thank you, Chris. Now to a kind of a list of questions that came on in. Most of these are kind of maybe referring to more of the actual future engineering and architecture phase that we've begun back in March, actually. So I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can. So the first question was really about if we're having off-board fare, what kind of currency will those machines take? We hope we have to look more into that. I think right now, if you look across the nation, there is kind of some debate going back and forth. So if it take cash or just credit card, we'll have to look more into that as a technology piece. The question about snow piling up around stations. This is one of the elements that we've continually talked about, and was even brought up last night during the city council, was snow melt systems around high frequency walk locations. And I think that the application of that around our stations would be appropriate and within line with where we're headed as a community. A question about solar power. I think that's an opportunity again that we can look at or at the stations themselves, particularly when it comes to providing that heat. We'll have to see if there's any examples out there currently. And then the last one, maybe of these questions, I maybe want to defer to maybe Joni on this one. Was talking about the curb heights and the difference, and knowing the difference between the lower curb heights with people with maybe elderly people or people with visual problems.
So the access to the platforms from the street level would be a series of ADA accessible ramps to get you from the street up to the traditional sidewalk, and then from the traditional sidewalk up to the platform. So everything would be ADA accessible, and for folks to be able to transition from the street sidewalk network up to the platform for the buses. Is that answering the question, or?
I think that's a good attempt. I think that is something we're definitely going to have to look at as part of the engineering process and really get down to that detail as well. A quick question that did come on in through the Q&A box was right now the buses, the vehicles that we're looking at are to be electric. Right now, I guess I can go ahead and announce that we received some additional funds to go ahead and buy a couple more electric buses. So hopefully by, I would say 2022, 2023, we'll already have 3 or 4 buses that are electric already in the RPT fleet. And then there's a question here about mitigating and minimizing negative impacts on businesses. I think I'll come out and say that we've noticed as a staff and as a community that how negative and how impactful construction can be on the community and the neighborhoods around there. And so, yes, we will definitely take a look, learn our lessons, particularly after this year, and learn our lessons and try to see if we can't do additional things to help as the bus rapid transit is put in place and constructed. With that, I do see one question, one person who has their hand raised, and that is Kelly. Kelly, if you can give a second to go ahead and try to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Jared. I just had a couple quick questions. I noticed that looks like the height and the length of the buildings have been scaled back from the previous plan. I'm still not sure that it follows the current TOD zoning as far as height and length. That'd be something to be looked into. And I've also noticed tonight now that they've added a bikeway on 3rd Avenue. Now, is that saying that you're going to go 2 lanes on 3rd Avenue then? Or what, are we going to try to sneak that in? Southeast.
Yep. Thank you, Kelly. Chris, can you take a shot at least answering the first one?
Yeah, the first one, yeah, we've everything is within existing zoning right now.
Thank you.
And shown. Yeah, just to confirm that, I know Kelly, I think you asked the question about that.
I did.
Yeah. So yeah, we've kind of cross-checked and had discussions with partners and stakeholders, and yeah, so everything is within the zoning. 3rd Avenue. So Joni, Jared.
I can take a first take at this. So there are some bike facilities being shown on 3rd Avenue Southeast, and there still would need to be quite a bit of vetting in order to determine whether they would fit in and what form that bike facility would take. We understand that in terms of where transit might go could affect that. We also understand that there's a lot of competing demands for that street right away. So we would need to be, we're putting it out there as a aspirational goal, but it certainly needs to be vetted very thoroughly in terms of how it would work in terms of all the other competing demands for that street right away.
Okay, even though there's bike paths currently along both sides of Broadway?
There are currently existing multi-use paths along both sides of Broadway today. You are correct.
So then why would we need to narrow 3rd Avenue? That's really, I'm in the Sunnyside neighborhood, and that's the only access to our neighborhood is 3rd Avenue.
Okay, so that is the comment is noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would reemphasize on that 3rd Avenue is that I think those aspirationals, we really need to do a lot more research on that one, and I think it's going to come. I think this is an idea or concept that could be looked at more thoroughly during the next planning study that's proposed there in the Southeast Waterfront District planning study. With that, I don't see anyone else having their hand raised or any additional more questions. Do we have our feedback slide next.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of more slides, feedback slides next. Yeah, and I think this is the final thing we want to show tonight. This is available on the website as well. But kind of an initial concept. This is actually at 6th Avenue, so kind of an early idea and kind of how does this all come together? Thinking about, and of course it's very conceptual, but thinking about how do all these elements come together in terms of new transit, new streetscape and public realm, and then new development that may occur as well. So this is what a strong mobility network, prioritizing well-being and guiding smart growth could mean in the future. So we're investigating the other station areas at the same level of investigation. So you should see some more of these over time.
Okay. So if that's all we have, then I'll just, is there something further, Chris?
No, that's it, I think, unless, do we want to, Jono, do you want to skip back to the slides that has the information on how to engage?
Yep, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yes, so once again, there is another version of this webinar next Tuesday from noon to 1. Once again, we'll be covering all the same material. So if you've attended tonight, there's no need. But once again, you'll be able to take your time and look at all the images on our project webpage. Once again, that's rochestermm.gov/Rochester TOD. Like I said, all the images and even tonight's PowerPoint should be on there definitely by tomorrow morning. And then, as always, you can reach out to the project at rapidtransit@rochestermm.gov, or by giving us a call at 507-328-2025. With that, I'll thank you all once again for participating tonight and taking the time out of a wonderful summer evening to be part of this. Any last parting words, Chris?
No, just thank you everybody for tuning in tonight, and yeah, please investigate the information that's available on the webpage and send us your comments.
And yes, one thing I believe, I haven't verified this, but I'm pretty sure we still have it, that at when this session is over and we close out, you'll be given a survey. You'll be taken to a survey and asked a few additional questions, not only about how you thought this evening's session went, but also if you have any additional thoughts or concerns about some of the material you saw here tonight.
That's correct.
Thank you, Jenna. So with that being said, thank you all and have a good night, and hope to see you more in person soon.